Talk about migration and two very interesting stories in the news today with Danny Shaw, who's a Home Affairs commentator, of course. Good morning to you, Danny.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, this is a story, it's interesting about the basically Migration Advisory Committee, watchdog and advisors to the government on the cost of foreign spouses, foreign partners who are brought to this country by people who, are British, born here, people who've got right to live here, and they bring their other halves. And I think a lot of people will be really surprised by quite how much that is a cost to the taxpayer. Tell us about it.
Yes, the Migration Advisory Committee, which is a group of experts that advises the government, have done some calculations from 2022-2023. That year, 51,000 people came as partners of people who were legally in the UK. They'd been in a relationship for 2 years or more, so they were allowed to come to Britain. Those are the rules.
Can't just be someone you met on holiday.
No. God, can you imagine?
Oh, I think we're delving into Danny's past there, wonderfully. There's a story there, I can tell.
A long time ago. So over half of them are unemployed. The net fiscal cost was £109,000 compared to
per arrival.
Per person, compared to people who are British residents, which is £110,000 contributing.
But that's over a lifetime, isn't it? It's basically. But I'm assuming somebody who arrives in this country from living abroad, they've had to leave their job. They don't have a job when they arrive. Is any evidence, though, that they do get a job when they get here?
No, a lot of them end up not working. I think the employment rate is 65% after a short period of time, but then that goes down as they get older. And obviously, when they're here for some time, they can access the NHS and other benefits.
Yeah.
And that's why it costs the taxpayer, the government, all of us more money.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons, I think, why the government has tried to tighten the rules around that, particularly with regard to people who are given refugee status.
Yeah, bringing in their partners.
As soon as they were allowed granted refugee status, they were allowed to bring family members in, which seems
and I think a lot of people would see a big difference between someone who is British, born in this country, who then goes and works abroad, lives abroad, meets somebody in another country, falls in love with them, marries them, and then wants to come back and live here. Maybe family's getting elderly, or they want to have kids here. And they can't. And I've spoken to so many people over the years who say, we just, because of my income, it doesn't hit the salary threshold and it keeps going up and up by, £1,000. Because I'm not a big earner myself, even though I'm a British citizen, I can't bring my wife or my husband in, but someone who is wealthy can. And I think most of us would feel that's not the kind of limitation we want. If it's a genuine relationship and you're British, you should be allowed to bring your partner in. But I think we draw the line for people who have been allowed to come to this country, even if they then get that status, to then be able to bring people in. I think those are very different rights, surely.
I think you're absolutely right. I think someone that's, born in the UK and has lived here, falls in love with someone from abroad, and after, 2 years or more long-term relationship, they want to live together, perhaps have a family. That is very different from someone who's recently come to the UK, been allowed to stay and can bring their family in. I think you're absolutely right. And I think the government is trying to make a sharper distinction. Just one thing, what this analysis did by the Migration Advisory Committee, it didn't take account of the children who couples will then have, who may actually contribute to the economy.
But they also are a cost when they're going to state schools.
They may do, but because they're more likely to be younger, they're more likely to be of working age and therefore contributing.
Yeah.
Very complex.
Well, these things are complex, aren't they? At the end of the day, British citizens, we cost a lot of money when we're, the early years for, being born and then their education, and then the latter years of the benefits, even if you're, a fully contributing working member of society. And the vast majority, in the country are not net contributors in terms of the actual money they cost. That's why people who are very rich pay more tax, and with all the other taxes to help pay for everything. But this is about looking at whole life contributions, and as we're seeing again and again, a lot of people who come here legally because they're on low earnings, and once they get the right to stay here, definitely to remain, and this has all been exposed, I think, for a lot of people who wouldn't have known in the last 6 months or so, then they get entitled to benefits. Often then they don't carry on working, or they're still getting extra help, and actually they're not net contributors. Then they retire and they cost frankly, a small fortune. And funnily enough, it turns out that mass immigration of people on low incomes and low skilled work isn't the economic boom that we were told it was going to be.
No, but I think what you have to remember is that we had a period of time where governments were encouraging people to come to the UK to fill those jobs, to do those low-paid jobs that British-born workers just didn't want to do. And we had the Boris wave after Brexit of the lax sort of controls around foreign workers, which allowed hundreds of thousands of people to come in, a net migration approaching 1 million, I think.
Yeah.
1
Well,
year.
we was talking on the show yesterday about the Policy Exchange think tank saying we need to have an emergency census to actually find out how many of these people, the best part of 4 million people. We have no idea who's in this country. We have no idea how many people have arrived, how many people have left. The overstayers on student visas, on work visas, we know is on a grand scale, quite apart from the illegal arrivals themselves on the boats, on the lorries. We haven't got a clue how many people are in this country. We're told we're around the 70 million mark. I'd be surprised if it's not about 5 million higher than that.
Well, it's 4 years since the last census, wasn't it? And I think there's a very good point to say, because of the inflows, that you need a more up-to-date figure, and that will help plan housing, education and other services as well. That's the whole point of having a census.
Exactly, and a lot of these figures are often wrong anyway, aren't they? Because the chairman of the Migration Advisory Committee, Professor Brian Bell, also pointed out yesterday the overall migration figure would jump in the median term for the current levels of around 204,000 to around 300,000 after 3 years of sharp falls. Basically, it's gone down as a result after the Boris wave when we all found out about it. But net migration, the number of people coming over, the number of people leaving, is set to increase. But by the way, one of the reasons those figures don't look as bad as they have been is because so many Brits are leaving. 250,000 Brits left last year.
Yeah, there's also quite a lot of British people who are returning as well, which is also counted. But no, I mean, net migration is going to go up. It's forecast to around 300,000, and that's principally because of the surge in asylum seekers and also family visas, which the Migration Advisory Committee says are the two hardest sort of areas to tackle, to bring down. So you can tackle foreign workers coming in, you can put restrictions there, but we have people switching to claim asylum, and we have people coming across illegally through the channel. And as we've seen, as we talked about many times, that is really hard to stop.
Absolutely. Really good to talk to you, Danny Shaw, Home Affairs commentator Danny Shaw. Thank you for joining us. Philip Ingram, I mean, come a show we've ever done, we've not ended up talking about migration. The main thing is now we actually are talking about it. We're actually talking about the real numbers. We're actually, we're actually getting people having a chance to actually know what's really going on and how much it's costing us.
Yeah. And when people come in, whether it be a partner of someone who's legitimately in this country or a citizen of this country and all the rest of it, there should be a net contribution score to society. And that should rely on financial, cultural, societal and everything else. And it should be looked at from a long-term perspective. And if someone's coming in to not work, then the whole family has to have a bigger score before they're allowed to stay.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's, again, even though those spouse rules, they were brought in to stop people just bringing in sort of, basically arranged marriages from India and Pakistan.
They're still coming in.
But it also ended up affecting Brits who've been here, who've lived all their lives here, but other than worked abroad, found someone else they fell in love with, and they weren't able to bring them to live with them. It's extraordinary.